Thank you very much, Oren. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this very early session. It's my honor to be able to speak on a topic which I've been studying and researching, but know still very, very little. So this is also a good opportunity for me to learn from everyone here. I see some of my colleagues, and new faces. I'm very glad to be able to be here and talk. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you, and then we'll start from here. So as Oren mentioned, this is the topic of my talk, from anthropocentrism to Cosmo Ubuntu. Let me find. Enlightenment from teachings of the Taoist masters and the Buddha. So the outline of today is that I will relate some teaching in Taoism and stories told by Master Zhuangzi. Then I will tell two stories about the Buddha, and then connect that to work with spiritual traditions. Then I will discuss a bit about crisis we're in and why, and the pathway we can choose to a new consciousness. So then we'll have a short meditation, and then breakout room discussions, and then coming back and share and conclusion. So the core questions for us to think about today is, how can we forgo anthropocentrism and construct a sense of cosmo Ubuntu and being? And what type of learning do we need to promote in order to embrace a world for all? So the idea of Ubuntu, it means I am because we are, right? So this is a principle in Africa, and it's a principle used by leaders like Desmond Tutu, who adopted to form the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa in 1994. You know, in 1994, after apartheid was ended, there was a lot of call for blood, eye for an eye, and civil uprising was going to break out. And so, how do we? What path do we choose? Civil war or peace? So leaders like Desmond Tutu, they form a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for for the two parties, two sides to sit down and then confess crime and ask questions, demand answers, and so on. And so there was the peaceful move forward after that. So Ubuntu persists that while we are interdependent, we are co-evolving in this world. We need to enhance each other. And Ubuntu, is critical for sustaining the human societies and the human communities for a long period of time. The question is it to be applied only to the human society? So today I'm positing that we need to apply it to the cosmos. And this idea is called Cosmo Ubuntu. So half close your eyes and look into the image. Do you feel that the stars are talking to you? I once urged a colleague to look at the star when we were high in the mountain, in the Wudang Mountain, a Taoist site. He was shocked. He felt literally the stars were talking to him. And in the midsummer night, do you feel like you are hearing a symphony with millions and trillions of insects singing together? So how many do you think are there in the chorus, right? It's really a magnificent show. Have you been to Kenya and Tanzania and see the magnificent life there? You know, basically in a very simple piece of grassland, with some bushes and a river, you see so many spectacular life forms there. We should call them people. And they live in families, in groups like us, and they're just beautifully, beautifully designed. So who create these people? Can you observe how many varieties there are there and how wonderful in color and in shape? So what is behind nature's intelligence? Why there are four seasons? Why trees shed leaves when winter comes? Why bears hibernate? And why we don't hibernate? When I was teaching in Canada at McGill University, I always ask this question. And I wonder why we don't hibernate, because the winter was so long, right? We should do that. And also, is there an a priori or a priori script, behind our intelligence? Why it takes a baby, 40 weeks to become fully a baby, right? A fertilized egg, 40 weeks to become a baby. Who designs the eyes to be so beautiful? Who makes the smile so amazing and wonderful? Why 5 fingers? So we don't oftentimes think about those questions, right? We just take it for granted. But there's something really magical and amazing behind this. It's like a feel into this life system that's among us and in the whole world. And our body and the universe are built in the same way. Why is our cell structure so similar to the structure of the solar system and to the structure of the universe? What is behind this powerful force that sustains the stars from collapsing into each other? Why they move around in their orbits, smoothly? So a lot of big questions, right? Including what's the origin of life? What's the meaning of life? How do we relate to each other and to nature? Um, I see some of my friends and colleagues here, and they know that I love telling these stories. In Taoism, that the force that create the whole universe is called Tao, right? Tao is this propelling creative energy that is behind everything, in everything, among everything. It is the energy, spirit, matter, information, and morality actually behind everything. So Tao creates everything out of nothing. This nothing actually is an invisible energy field. It's always there. It's like a potential. In quantum physics, it's called potentiality and manifested potentials. And when conditions, arise, Tao will create things. So this is a pond that it's formed out of, like, say, rain. There's a rainpour and a small pond was formed, right? And then tadpoles appear there, and then soon you see frogs. And if the water become bigger and deeper, you see fish, and you see larger and larger fish if the water becomes larger, right? And this is the site of a Soviet Union nuclear power plant leak. After the explosion of the power plant, right, there was a huge emission of radiations. So the Soviet government ordered 300,000 citizens to evacuate. So that place was sealed off as inaccessible to people. So after 30 years, people went back to the site. They found that bisons have appeared there, bears there are there, lynx, wolves, horses are there. and there are 30 different kinds of birds there. So who created them? Who brought them there? They manifest, right? Seems to be out of nowhere. So in Taoism, the belief is that there's there's the Tao, and then there's this empty field of energy and spirits, and they form into qi, this life energy, and then qi fill up into some forms, templates, right? And then they fill up the whole universe. So in Taoism, Tao is manifested in virtues, right? Humans are part of Tao, and so is everything. Everything is part of Tao, right? The whole universe is engaged in the exchange of energy in a reciprocal relationship. So daily we receive from the cosmos like cosmic rays, and cosmic rays are not like visible, but they are bombarding the earth, giving all lives on earth energy. Um, and then the sun and moon gives us energy, right? Gives the life on earth energy to survive and to grow. We all know about that. And then mountains are actually considered to be the backbone of the earth, the mother earth, who is a living being. Mountains give us snow, and then snow turns into water, and water nurtures us, right? And trees give us oxygen, and we give trees carbon dioxide. So we're all engaged in a give and take relationship, and we form a reciprocal cosmo ubuntu. Actually, we also give energy to the sun and the moon. There's a mystical book in Chinese culture. It's buried in the book of history. It's called the Heaven Palace book, and it talks about how there's a god riding, the North Star as his or her, ship to travel around the universe and to make sure things are in order. And it talks about how when there's a war, or conflict on Earth, the sun will react, and then the stars in the sky will shift their place. So in this energetic system in the whole universe, everybody affects everybody else. So the whole universe interdepends on each other. So the universe is an integration of matters, information, energy, spirit, and consciousness. And Einstein actually says that there's no separation between matter and energy, right? This famous equation basically says energy and mass are interchangeable. And energy is information, energy is consciousness, So matter, behind matter, that can be converted into energy. There is information and energy and consciousness as well. So we need to discover that. Maybe this is the biggest discovery in the 21st century. So Pythagoras talk about a universe being like a symphony, right? With different spheres playing different notes. They all contribute though to the harmony of the whole universe. And Leibniz talk about that there's a predetermined harmony in the universe. God creates monad, and monad, they link with each other, they collaborate with each other. And in Taoism, in this energy information universe, there are virtues and moral principles that are built into it. They are like technologies. So the Taoist aspiration is for longevity, health, and actually immortality. They realize that if you want to have this great, powerful energy to live a very, very long life, to live forever, you have to do virtues. There are technologies, you have to follow. So in some, this building mechanism that sustain and coordinate the functioning of the universe are virtues. So Tao Te Ching, the book, the most famous book in Taoism by Lao Tzu, talks about Tao as the energy and De as the virtue. So they are inseparable. So today I'm going to focus a bit on Taoist master Zhuangzi, right? Zhuangzi is the one who makes great statements and give wonderful stories about how we should not follow anthropocentrism, that we are not, above others. So he lived about 200 or 300 years after Lao Tzu and Confucius or Plato. And he described how he experienced Zhuo Wang, who in it's a meditation state, a meditative state, right? He said, I meditate and then I'm lost in the vast space of the universe. And he said, when I'm in this really tranquil state, the great powerful light that we all have in our nature appear. And he said, when I enter a cosmo Ubuntu's consciousness, I can hear the voices of all life forces, not only with my ears, but only with my heart, not only with my heart, but also with my energy, my life, vital life energy. So he said, listening with our vital life energy, we become one with all and all with one, right? And realize that all are equal. So here is a quote. He said, hearing the heavenly music, I know that I'm born the same with heaven and earth and one with the tens of thousands of things. So what ground do we have to be arrogant? So his book, Zhuangzi, right, which has 33 chapters, also include more than 200 metaphors and stories. So I'm sharing a few of them. So this is a story about a tree, So one day, two carpenters walked past this tree, and one is the older carpenter, and then the younger one is his disciple. So the disciple said, "Oh, master, look at this tree; it's so huge." And then the master carpenter said, "Well, this is a useless tree, and I don't even want to look at it, So at night, the tree appeared in the dream of the master carpenter and the master carpenter, and the tree said, "Why do you say I'm useless? Why do you sneer at me? I am useless because he said I intently choose to be useless because if I smell, you don't want to get close to me. When I'm crooked, you don't want to cut down my trunks to make a column for your house or to make your coffin." So he said, for you, I'm useless, but for me, because of my uselessness, I live very long. So who knows what is useful and what is not useful? And this is a story about two beauties. So Zhuangzi said, there are two beautiful women. Everybody said they're so beautiful and everybody praised them. But he said, when the fish saw the two beauties, they swim quickly deep into the bottom of the water because they are scared of them. And when the deer saw them, they dash away. They run as fast as like lightning. So when the birds see them, and they just fly into the sky. Maybe we should add also when the tigers see them, they want to eat them. So Zhuangzi said, who is beautiful? Who knows what is beauty? And this is the story of a sad bird, right? So this bird was caught by somebody who gave it to an emperor. So the emperor said, "Oh, wow! So we should, let the bird know what is good life." So he ordered his dance troupe, beautiful girls and women, to dance for days for this bird. But for the bird, the dancing and the music was a horrible torture. So he was tortured and tortured, and then he died. So who knows what is joy, right? For us, maybe it's joy and beautiful, and for other species, it's torture. So where's the best place to live? Zhuangzi said, for an eel, the muddy place, right, the wet place is like heaven. But for humans, if we stay there, we live there, we become wet, we have back pain, and so on. And then he says, if humans sleep on the tree, they would would be anxious, they would be fearful, and so on. But what about the monkeys? They'll be really happy dancing up there. So who knows where's the best place to live? And Zhuang once was all offered a position to be an official working for the emperor. And the emperor said, wow, this is a great position for you. You know, you'll be worshipped and so on. So Zhuangzi said, I don't want to be like a turtle who is placed on the ancestor shrine and worshipped. I'd rather be like this turtle, you know, pulling my tail in the mud, but I'm free and happy. So for Taoist masters, you know, their aspiration is not to be restricted to be this just human perspective, human standpoint, but to be like this great bird Peng. You know, he described the Peng like a huge bird that transformed from a fish into you know, in this great bird, great eagle that has a wing of 3,000 miles, and she can soar into the sky, into the universe for 90,000 miles. So that kind of vision, you know, it's not only for like a limited human vision, but rather you see much further and much deeper. So Taoist belief is that we should treat all species as our Earth siblings, right? We should not cage birds or animals. We should not kill insects. Should not torture pets. We should not break the embryos and eggs of wildlife, and we should treat basically all species, right, with respect, like we treat ourselves. So next, I turn to two stories about the Buddha, right? So this is a story about the Buddha saving the dove, right? So in a previous life, um, the Buddha, right? He pledged that he would help all sentient and non-sentient beings from suffering. So actually, he spent many of his lives trying to help people and to be so compassionate that he felt all existence, you know, are valuable and equal to us. So sentient beings like human beings have feelings and so on, and non-sentient beings, even like mountains and river and so on. So once two deities, right, King Shibi and his minister and his minister, they decided to test the Buddha. So they turned into a hawk and a dove. So the hawk was chasing the dove, and then the dove was you know, running to the Buddha and asked for help. And the Buddha said, "I will help you." And the hawk said, "You're taking my meat, my meal from me. You have to return it to me." And then the Buddha said, "You can cut my flesh. You know, you can cut the equal weight of the dove, you know, off my body and feed yourself." But then with magical power, King Shibi make the dove bigger and bigger until the Buddha cut off all of his flesh. But anyway, the ending was happy that he actually was Buddha actually become uh, much higher in his spiritual growth and so on, and he's restored. The other story is I first heard about it when I visited Dunhuang in the western part of China in the desert. Right, Dunhuang is a place that contains 700 caves of murals. You know, they are all Buddhist paintings, and this painting is about the Buddha in a previous life. And his name at that time was called Prince Mahasatta. You know, one day he was traveling in the woods and he saw six tigers. So the tigress, the tiger mother, just gave birth to the little tigers, and she was very weak and she didn't have milk to feed the little tigers, and the little tigers were hungry and were about to die. So the Buddha laid down in front of the tiger and asked them to eat him, but they were the mother tiger was too weak, she couldn't. So the Buddha jumped, you know, ran up to a high cliff and jumped down and lay in front of the mother tiger, and the mother tiger was able to feed on his blood. So this is the mural that shows that the Buddha ran up to the cliff and he used a needle to poke his throat to kill himself, and then he jumped off the throat. This is that he jumped up the cliff, and then he landed in front of the tiger mom. So extending from Buddhism and Taoism, I want to say that this unity consciousness deeply embedded in our perennial wisdom, right? Native Americans, right, indigenous people, they know deeply that we are part of nature, that we are part of the life forces that's in our place, in our environment, in the whole universe. So they said there's no wildlife but peoples. You know, when we write the word wolf, it's not an abstract term, but rather the wolf is a living being, a living person. And Jainism, if some of you, maybe most of you, all of you know that, treats even the smallest insect as having a spirit, a life force, and should be, should not be killed, right? And in Judaism, Isaiah talks about a future possibility when the lion and the lamb lay down together and the child leads them. So there can be a world that, people don't kill each other, animals don't kill each other, it's all in peace. Because at that time, maybe the vibration, the energy that, sustain and hold up the universe is a different kind. And Jesus gave his life to people, to the humanity, because he lived in this unity consciousness. He didn't feel that he lost his life to other people, but rather he became one with others, right? And that is a French girl. This is the French girl, Tipi. She was born in Africa. She grew up in Africa. And she made friends with all kinds of animals, like this leopard, and she didn't feel any fear. She said, I talk with them with my spirit, with my energy. And Lao Tzu and Confucius both talk about a future world that, where there are weapons, but it will be left to be rusted. And then the weak people, the sick people, the elderly are all taken good care of. And the able people are given full opportunities to develop their full potential. Coming to our modern age, we have read all about the crisis we're in, right? So every year, 77 billion animals are slaughtered for human food. So there's a lot of mismanagement and slaughtering and killing. And also we pollute our nature, right? Ocean, mountain, water, sky, land. And also we're experiencing a great species extinction. More than 20% of the Earth's species have gone extinct since 1900. And the speed of extinction is becoming quicker and faster. So scientists say that we may be undergoing the sixth species extinction. So how have we become like that? I'm going to show a video. Maybe some of you have watched it, seen it, but it's very, very telling about what have happened.
I didn't realize how many mistakes I was making in English until I started to use Grammarly.
It's like having a proofreader and an English teacher right there.
Speaking English is way easier to me than writing it. Grammarly.
So this video.
Monster Math presents
Sorry.
Addition Below 10. Okay, class, let's begin. What is 5 plus 3? We
Just
can
a
solve the
sec.
problem by counting on.
So if you want to write in the chat out what you feel about watching this video. What come to your mind? I see sad but so true, right? It is so true. I just see so many evidences happening in our life every day. Yeah, like the challenge to reverse the damage. How can we do that? Something's really wrong with modernity. Thank you for this sharing. I'm going to continue the PowerPoint. So what caused our demise, right? We can talk about anthropocentrism in religions, right? That, for example, the Bible is interpreted as that we are made by God to be, below God, but above all species, right? And capitalism, right, persists that our happiness is based on pursuit of, of wealth and power, right? And scientism teaches us that, we are to be objective, right? We should not mingle our emotions and spirituality with knowing the world. And also this the greed and merciless, right, exploitation of nature for everything. So the earth is on fire. If we envision the earth as a human being, what does she feel? How does she feel, right? That her blood, like the oil was plundered and drawn daily, right? Like her hair was burned daily. Hair can be her, the trees on earth, and her other siblings, right, that are tortured and murdered every day. So do we have a way to survive, right? And how do we revitalize the perennial wisdom? I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I think that we need to have a Cosmo Ubuntu consciousness, which is that everything is light, everything is sacred. All species are intelligent and beautiful in their own ways. All species have the same right to live and respect. And even trees, mountains, rivers, oceans, and so on, they all have spirits and they are to be respected. And the whole universe is to be seen as alive and a living, intelligent being. And they are all love in manifestation, expressing joy. There's the energy of love that enable us to take care of our siblings, and the same for other species, and to sustain the universe. So we are because the universe is, right? Because there's love in the universe. So we should see diversity as like this incredible, beautiful expression of the song of life, right? And then underneath the unity, the diversity, there's our genetic interconnection. Humans are similar in genes, 99.99%, right? And we're only 2% in difference in our genes with chimpanzee. We share similar genes with trees and mice, right? And rocks even. So we have this energy connection with everything, right? And emotional interconnection. If you treat your plant well, your plant will respond, to become much more lively and healthy. And of course, we have spiritual interconnection. We are made of the same source, manifesting the beauty and joy of life. So pathway to Cosmo Ubuntu, that has been, meditation has been explored, as the way to cultivate Tao and energy and morality, right? Lao Tzu, the Taoist master, said, "My heart travels to the origin of the universe, and then I experience great joy and beauty." And Guanzi, who is another Taoist master, he said, "Cultivating my qi, I harbor the virtues of the Tao, and then I become a sage. Stars are within myself. Virtues of Tao are within myself." Mengzi, who is a Confucian master, Buddhist Confucian master, he said, "I'm good in accumulating the all-encompassing, all-powerful creative qi." And Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and many, many religious leaders and spiritual teachers, they all spend years and days in deep meditation. And contemporaries like Gandhi, right, do that. For myself, I have spent 20 years in meditation. And when I first started, I was so shocked to find that I start to feel, the pain in the mouth of the fish that I love. I love to go fishing. I went fishing whenever I can. But after I studied on meditation, I was so shocked to feel that, the pain of the fish, and I stopped fishing. So contemplative practices such as meditation, qigong, and yoga, and so on, they are called cultivating Tao. The experience from these practices help to animate everything as a living force, and bring forth a sense of Cosmo Ubuntu, that we're all one, we're interconnected. We must help to sustain each other. So that's so far my presentation. We're going to do a short meditation, and then we'll go into breakout room for discussion. So this is a short meditation.
In January this year, I did ayahuasca with a shaman from Colombia. Now, for those of you who have never heard,
today I'm going to talk us through a very, very easy, one of the easiest and simplest ways of meditating to connect with Mother Earth. And this is something that anybody can do. So the best thing to do is go find a little spot in nature, whether it's sitting on a piece of grass, whether it's sitting on a rock, sitting on the sand, and connect with that space. If you can't go outside or it's too cold and you're inside, then just visualize a connection with something natural, with Mother Earth, with the rocks, with the mountains, with the tree, with some grass or earth, because just feeling and connecting with that energy can really help as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes and we're just going to feel that connection with the earth. Inhaling deeply, deep full inhale, deep into the lungs, and full exhale. And then continue to breathe with consciousness and awareness. Feeling that connection through the earth. And then begin to visualize that you're sprouting or growing roots through your base, through your lower body, and feel those roots flowing deep down into the earth, connecting in, feeling that beautiful, deep, safe earth energy, nourishing, alive, and very holding. And then as you inhale, begin to feel yourself drawing up that sustenance from the earth, that light, that nourishment. Inhaling nourishment from the earth and feeling it fill your body. And with every inhale, drawing up nourishment from the earth. Feeling connected and feeling at one with the earth. And this is a really nice meditation that you can do anytime. It's so simple. We can bring in deeper and more complex meditations, but there's nothing like the simplicity of just connecting with the earth, with awareness, feeling your energy move down deep into the earth and bringing up the nourishment of Mother Earth to nourish and heal you. So when you come out of a meditation like that, just get a sense of that real groundedness, that real earthy healing groundedness, and then you can bring that with you throughout your day. It's a really great thing that you can do in just a couple of minutes, and it can
Okay, thank you, Jing, so much for the talk and for the exercise with the meditation in the end. I think this was really useful. So I think we will take a couple of questions for Jing, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Jing provided a couple of questions for us to reflect on, but let's take a couple of questions. You can raise your virtual hand or you can raise your actual hand, whatever works for you. Anyone? Go ahead, Darren, please.
Yeah, Jing, thank you so much for your presentation. So something that struck me, and I think maybe I'm looking more for a comment from you, is this idea of an intellectualization of our existence. Is that we overthink, we logic out our existence, our time here on this planet, and perhaps make somehow binary kind of decisions of flip the lever yes, flip the lever no. And I think that permeates the rest of how we perceive the world, is that things work in yes or no, black or white. And I think the complexity of our existence is perhaps lost to us through constantly being told by so many different ways that it's either black or white. And I think my question is that I think throughout your presentation, I was struck by how many stories you told. And I wondered to myself, is storytelling somehow an antithesis to this idea of intellectualization of existence and bringing emotion and behaviors and narrative into our binary of thought or how we've been conditioned? So I'm just curious to hear about perhaps this idea of storytelling and the importance of it in Cosmo Ubuntu.
Thank you. I think you have said it so beautifully, that we have intellectualized so much, right? That we often operate in this yes and no, bipolar fashion. Storytelling has this power, right, of like bringing people together, co-creating, right, and sensing not only the script but also to experience, the emotion, right, to experience the story, and then so it creates a kind of like interbeing, right, and interconnection. So it's a very powerful of knowing. Like indigenous people still keep that as the main way of knowing, right? And also in many traditional societies, storytelling are much more effective. For example, healing, than this like person to person counseling, storytelling, because create this creative space, right? That people come together, merge their energy, I talk about energy, matter, information, spirit, emotions together. So it become a holistic experience.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. Any other questions before we go to breakout rooms? Okay, people are eager to meet other people and chat. So we're going to create 5 or 6 rooms, I see by the numbers that we have. And Jing was kind enough to provide guiding questions for us. I posted the link to the Google Doc in the chat box, so please use that when you meet in a small group. We'll give something like 15 minutes for small group activity, and then we'll come back with reflections and comments from the groups. Have fun, everybody. I hope you had a good time in small group discussions. Let's bring up some themes from the different groups. Just raise your hand and we'll sequence responses. Laura, is that raising your hand? No.
I just feel we didn't have enough time. We're like in the middle of something. I'm sorry. This is such a big, what I figured out is that I don't know nothing. I mean, I don't know enough in order to get a grip of like, how do you say, like of anything. I think I just got like, I feel like I have to read a lot now in order to understand what you were saying, because I think you've been studying it for like 30 years and I just listened to you for 20 minutes. So I think I'm not ready to to understand it. So it'll take a while. But thank you, it's really interesting. I'm glad I made it. Thank you.
I provide a list of my publications to Oren so he can send it around.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Yep, I will post it. Any other thoughts?
I'll jump in. We mentioned well, Elsa mentioned at the very end of our breakout or somewhere in there about um, indigenous knowledge systems. And I'm so thankful for those who are First Nations and indigenous peoples in academia who are sharing that way of education, that system of education, because I really feel like it holds promise for having children and adults think and feel in new ways and really feel their connection with all beings on the planet and working and acting from that position. Because embedded in that type of curricula is the notion of reciprocity, of resonance. They use storytelling and story creation a lot, and it's also embedded in that. And I'm a white woman, so I'm paraphrasing perhaps in an imperfect way, but they also have embedded in that the concept of sharing the stories in order to pass down the teachings that you learn, and you create a knowledge or a knowing, and you share that in the community in order to perpetuate a regenerative community as part of the earth as well. So there's many resources now in academic journals, even on the subject of indigenous science. Um, yeah, and my link to my article that I put back in the chat, I have a bunch of those resources in the article.
Thank you, Brett Frame. Elsa, I saw your hand a minute ago.
I was just going to, I guess I was going to highlight a bit of the same of what Bright Flame was saying, but make the connections to what I was talking about earlier, which is the notion of posthumanism and new materialism as a kind of academic approach towards this notion of interconnectivity. When I say academic, I mean Eurocentric, more Eurocentric version of that kind of way of thinking. And I mean, I think there are some tensions in how it perhaps does not recognize as much as it needs to indigenous knowledges in that kind of conversation, but it is really interesting to look at the kind of ways that these things overlap. And writers like Karen Barad and Donna Haraway are really important in that sort of space. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention as well, because I've been reading recently, is Arturo Escobar's work on pluriversality, which is really interesting in trying to kind of provide a way of enabling all types of epistemology, so a plurality of epistemologies to come to the surface. So this notion of pluriversality, I don't know if you've come across it, I hadn't until quite recently. So, but it really helps in enabling everyone's different approaches to knowing the world to be given the same kind of level of recognition, I guess. And I also just wanted to say thank you very much, Jing, for your talk. I only caught the end of it, but I'm going to have a look at the recording. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa. Any other comment or thought?
I would like to ask.
Please.
I am trying to find where we will put that kind of worldview into our system of education, because we are essentially different. I think that the question which was so recurrent in the ladies in Jing Lin presentation was why. We have no why in nature. Darwinists don't ask why, they ask how it happened, not why it happened. It is so just because it is so. It happened, it was viable, so it survived. That's all. We don't have a why if we are not in religious education. And then, so another question. Nature is awesome, but it is also awful. So we can teach people to try to love it because it is an intrinsic value which you must love because it is nature. And but we can also see nature as another kind of value, instrumental. You must keep nature alive because you belong to it. You are an animal actually. And if you destroy it, you destroy yourself. So they have taken a very clear point of view, the Taoists. But I don't know if we can introduce such a point of view beyond knowing that it exists in our education. And I would ask you, there, by the way, when you choose this topic, why did you choose it? What did you expect from it?
Oh, so a question for me, why do I choose this topic?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned that I started doing meditation like about 22 years ago. And it was a really an incredible experience. You know, it's like all of a sudden I become open up to the whole universe. You know, I start to feel like everything has a spirit. Even like a tree talk to me, even like a light post talk to me, you know, and I start to see everything as a life force, right? So, and since then, my and also all of a sudden, all the dangers, right? That, for example, Mother Nature's cry, you know, crying and suffering become very real for me. It's like everything become alive, right? So, and so I become very interested in understanding what's behind this, what is the energy that connects all life forms, and how I feel for, let's say, for everything. You know, I start to feel the pain of people, you know, and stuff. So, and then I feel this very deep sense of interconnection. And when I read works by Taoist masters and read about Buddhism and then world religions, it seems like there's this interconnected link. You know, there's this piece behind everything that basically said we are all one, we are interconnected. And despite of all these conflicts we have, right, and problems we have, it's like very obvious this link in there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Amos, and thank you, Jane, for the response. Any other comments or question?
And I just want to say, to relate to Amos' question about education, I think we should educate in very wide, open, and diverse approaches, because I think as educators, that's the way I believe, we should open the mind of our students, not only to the science approach that's behind everything. And I think we should think for a minute or 20 minutes or 1.5 hours from a totally different place that we used to, or that is regular and that we are doing all the time. So that is my comment to Amos' question.
Okay. Other than that, any other comments or questions?
I want to make a comment. You know, Daphne talk about education, right? I was in her group and we talk about how when we listen to the night song, right, this Midsummer Night Symphony, and we were imagining what kind of instruments are there in playing, and so that kind of education that can bring vividness, right, into back into students' life, that they start to animate and all other existence and embody wisdom. And Joanna, who is here, she was, you know, helping to design, let's say, some activity for us to think about, but we didn't have time. Like we put ourselves into a position of a wolf, you know, and now the challenge we are facing, right? And all the species that now are near extinction, what are their challenges? How do they feel? So, you know, many different varieties of many different ways of learning that would bring us back into the sense of that interconnection, but we have not explored enough in those areas.
So I will take the opportunity to make a comment, or maybe it's a question for us, and it's something along the lines of this argument. Jing shared with us a couple of stories that are central in that kind of work around Buddhism and the Taoism. And one of the stories was about the tree, the useless tree, which I love that story because I couldn't stop comparing it to another story that is very common in the West, and it is the giving tree or the generous tree, depends on the translation. And the messages are completely different. The stories that we tell about what we do with the tree or what the tree is doing for us is completely different. And I was wondering, Jing, if you know about any research that looked at this difference in the narratives that we give kids through these books or stories, if you know if anyone did something like that.
No, I don't know.
Okay, we have a research project for my team.
I saw an AERA presentation years ago where somebody presented on, I don't remember if they talked about the giving tree per se, but they looked at that kind, the frames and different kind of stories, and whether it was a more indigenous lens or aligned with that versus a more Western lens. I see if I could dig out my notes from way back.
That would be great. I'm sure my team will appreciate that. Jing, is the story about the tree has English translation, or is it something that, the story that you gave us about the tree, the useless tree, is that a book that is very common in China or other places?
No, not at all, not at all. It's just only in the book by Zhuangzi. So Zhuangzi's book is called Zhuangzi. You know, it's a thick book. It has 33 chapters, but with 200 metaphors. So he's using metaphor to teach.
I see. Okay, I'm going to follow up on this. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for another successful and super interesting workshop meeting. I want to thank Jing for her talk and for the meditation experience as well. And we will see you again next month. We'll send out information about the talk, the title, and the registration link. Have a wonderful day or evening there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Oren.